before we start, please give a huge, giant thank you to our tech ops people and all of the DragonCon volunteers. So, I never actually thought I'd get to say this because I never thought he'd actually come, but this is one of my 5 all-time favorite actors in the entire world, Mr. Chris Eccleston. First of all, I know what a giant hassle it is to get out of the United Kingdom and come here right now, so thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Brett. How's that? Am I loud and clear?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the invite.
So I wanted to start with this. This is his book. It is called I Love the Bones of You, which he wrote. Did you bring any to sell? The book? Did you bring any? But this is available, and I wanted to start with your book. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As someone who had a relative with dementia, you talk about your relationship with your father in dementia, and it's also a memoir about your acting and your career and stuff. But I think it is an incredibly powerful book about life and resiliency and love and family. And reading it during COVID was incredibly amazing. Can you just talk about what made you decide to write a book and the process of it?
Yeah. Is it okay? Shall I speak to the people? And yeah. I think my father, my dad Ronnie, was a hugely intelligent, creative man. And I think a big factor in his illness was the frustration he felt all his life because of his class in my country. There were huge restrictions on working class people generally, but of my dad's generation, who was born in 1929, they were huge. He was either for the factory, he was either going to factory fodder, or he was going to fight in a war. That was it. Those were his horizons. And I think as a child growing up, I sensed that frustration in him. He did a job, he did it well, but it did not allow him to express himself. And I think directly because of that, I became an actor. I think, frankly, I looked at my dad and I thought, I'm not. And it wasn't a judgment on my dad, but I thought, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm not gonna be that angry and that frustrated. I think that contributed to his dementia, that tension in him. And I always feel like I'm doing the things that my mum and my dad, and to a certain extent, my brothers could have done far better. But I happened to come along in 1964, was a younger generation, and there was more opportunity for me. So I wanted to write about him. I also wanted to write about love. One of the publishers said to me, we have a lot of books where daughters write about their mother's dementia. It's not an area where men venture, men speaking about their love for their father. And I'd always felt it. My dad was very macho. I always knew he loved me. He didn't tell me he loved me, but I always knew. And there was a certain point, I'm sure a lot of you know with dementia, there's a point with dementia, there's a sweet spot, or there certainly was with my dad. His inhibitors went out, and he started to say and do things that the tough guy would never have said. And one day, I went to visit him. He insisted on walking me, not just to the front door, but walking me to my car. And as I was getting in my car, I could feel his eyes on the back of my head, and he said, "Hey," and I turned around and he said, "I love the bones of you, And it's such a great expression. It's a very Salford expression. And interestingly, there's a Manchester band called Elbow. And years later, they released a song using that phrase, "I love the bones of you." But I didn't steal it from Elbow. They stole it from me. Anyway, my dad said that to me, and that was the title of the book. And that was the man, really. There was a lot of things my dad wanted to say and do, which his class and his gender told him he couldn't. So that's why I wrote the book.
It's incredible. Indulge me here because I'm a DJ and a music guy, and we talked a little bit about this before. By the way, there's the Summer of Soul when you go home. Summer of Soul.
Yeah.
Manchester, center of the musical universe from 1989 to like the mid-90s. The Smiths, Joy Division, New Order, Happy Mondays, New Fast Automatic Death. And you mentioned that you went to the Hacienda a couple times, and you were going to play Peter Hook in 24-Hour Party.
I was, yeah.
Is there a correlation between growing into an actor and a creative in an environment that is that culturally fertile? Can you just kind of talk about did that music and that arts culture scene in Manchester affect you as an actor and a performer coming up?
I think that probably a little bit like Atlanta and Detroit, it's the absence of a creative environment that creates the industry and the need to do it. Joy Division, who became New Order, talk about that a lot, that they tried to capture with their sound, the atmosphere of Manchester, which at the time was post-industrial, post-Second World War. It was bleak. That was the Manchester and Salford that I left. I just needed to get out. They stayed and created music from there. There was a sense coming from a working class background in a very industrial town that poetry and art and creativity and dance and music wasn't for us. So you see that in the music of the Smiths and Joy Division and Happy Mondays, etc. And actors like myself, that we go, actually, it is for me, and I do have something to say. So it's kind of, they affected me, yeah, definitely. I think punk, I was not into punk music. Definitely, what happened in '76 has its resonances from today onwards. It did make people feel, you know, because all those bands you're mentioning are of the new wave rather than punk.
Yeah.
Even Joy Division, a new wave. But it made us feel like we can get hold of this. It was a class kind of a quiet class kind of revolution. Even though it was led by the middle classes, a lot of working class people suddenly discovered that they could be creative. So yeah, that had a huge impact on me, only I went into acting. But of course I had people like Albert Finney, Richard Harris, Glenda Jackson, people like that, who had come through in the 60s, the kitchen sink kind of, they made me feel that I could be an actor as well.
Yeah. Like A Taste of Honey, that movie's great.
Those films.
Stay All the Night.
This Sporting Life, If, Saturday Night, Sunday Morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I was born at the wrong time. I should have been around in the 60s. I was born in '64. I wish I'd have been acting around that time.
You know, when I saw you in a couple projects, when you did the Cray Brothers movie, I was thinking that your career path kind of reminded me of Albert Finney.
Yeah, I wish.
The roles.
Yeah. He's my hero, Albert. My son's called Albert.
Can we talk about this show you did called Doctor Who?
Which show's that?
All right. First question. I had heard in an interview that you had emailed Russell saying, "Hey, Doctor Who's coming. I really want to do it." Can you kind of talk about getting the part, and also how familiar with it were you when you were lobbying for it?
I worked with Russell T Davies, who I think is the man who is the person who is most responsible for what we have, which is the Renaissance, because he's the writer. And I'd worked with him on a show called The Second Coming. And we had a really good working relationship. And I was out running one day, and I'd read that Russell was going to do Doctor Who, and I thought, wow, that's interesting, because he's an intellectual heavyweight in a sense. He's done a lot of political drama, and he came to the fore with a show called Queer as Folk, which smashed a lot of boundaries in television. He was political without being overtly political. And I thought that's a very interesting move for him to make. And I was considered a kind of political actor working on social realist dramas. And I felt like I'd acted for adults for a long, long time, and I wanted to change my career, and I really loved working with Russell. So I emailed him, and I said I'd like to audition for it. And I wanted to audition for it because I thought, Time Lord, that means he's falling through time. That means he's lonely. I can do lonely. So I auditioned. They gave me a plastic hand and a camera, and I wrestled with a plastic hand. Because I was seen as a very, very serious actor, you know. And they didn't believe I could do the comedy, and they were right. I got there eventually. So I think that's why I had to wrestle with it. You know, is this apparently Shakespearean guy going to be prepared to wrestle with a plastic hand? And I did that in a tiny little room on Oxford Road in Manchester. And then from there I started reading with people, and I read with Billy Piper, and it was clear that Billy was always going to be the person. And there was a good chemistry, and off we went.
I was absolutely over the moon when I heard you were going to be Doctor Who, because I loved you in Shallow Grave and all the Winterbottom films and everything. Cracker. This is the part where I hope I don't get brain. Why did you leave?
Why did I leave? I left because my relationship with Russell T Davies, Julie Gardner and Phil Collinson completely broke down during the shooting of the first series. 13 episodes. I think it's fair to say that a behemoth like Doctor Who, anybody will tell you it's probably true of Lost, it's probably true of Sopranos, it's probably true of all the big shows, that the first series, nobody knows what they're doing. And the politics are raging. You get executives at the BBC that were very hands-off. They were like, if this fails, I don't want to be implicated, you know? And then when it gets picked up, they're like, I'm responsible for this. So the shooting of the first series was a nightmare, and I was right at the centre of it. I was probably more experienced even than Russell. I'd probably been on more television and film sets than anybody. And I could see what was going on, I reported it back, and I just got silence. And I got a lot of, well, we didn't know that was happening, and I was like, well, it's your job to know what's happening. So the relationship of trust broke down. So off I went.
Now, having said that, you're doing Big Finish. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You have an amazing voice. I mean, I do radio, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could speak like that. Like the Orbital record, when I hear you on the Orbital record, and when I hear your audiobooks and stuff, it's like, that voice is amazing. And so it's perfect for the Big Finish audience. How is the Big Finish going, and what is it like being the Doctor again?
I loved it. I was surprised. Obviously, I've ran my career on writers. You're only as good as your writer as an actor. And the standard of Big Finish's writers, their ability, having never written for the television series, to capture the voice of that character is very impressive. And I found it, I do remember the first day, it was just before couple of weeks before Christmas, I went to a studio in this horrible industrial estate, God knows, somewhere in London. Miserable place. It was pandemic time, so I was alone. Usually when you do an audio drama, you're together with the actors, you have time to hang out. Nothing, it was just me and the gentleman who was recording the whole thing. We were masked, the director was dialing in, all the other actors were dialing in. But I found myself doing it and it all came back very easily. My sound engineer just kept saying to me, "Can you stop moving?" Because I was banging the mic, buttons were rustling. Because my doctor was quite physical. And I had to kind of, I should do it in a straitjacket, really. But it all came back, and it's a lovely way to do it. And I'm going into the studio in 3 weeks to record more.
Again, if you have questions, we have folks with microphones. This is the last part of the trilogy of these embarrassing questions I'm afraid to punch them for asking. Would you, Pretty Please with Sugar on Top, come back for the 60th anniversary?
I think that's very doubtful. My relationship with the BBC over Doctor Who has not healed. It hasn't, I hope this never happens to you, but at the time of my leaving, I agreed with Russell that I would go quietly and respectfully, and I would look after the show in publicity-wise, in terms of publicising it. And then, without saying anything to me, they announced that I was leaving. They didn't tell me they were going to do that. I was walking down the street and suddenly I got quite a lot of aggression. And more importantly, they should have said it. They created a quote and they attributed it to me, which said I was tired. Now the thing is about that, I found it too tiring. I didn't find it too tiring. I found it too tiring working with Russell and Phil and Julia. I didn't find it physically too tiring. When they said that, any other producer reading that would go, "Oh, we're not going to employ Chris Eccleston because he gets tired." So it was a lie. And it was in quotation marks. And I'm from Salford. You don't do that to me. So they issued a kind of apology, but it's not enough, so no. But I'll do Big Finish, and I'll come to these conventions.
So we have a question back over there.
You guys hear me? Sorry, got 20 masks on. Okay, so this question's from Ginny. She said, "I saw you in Macbeth at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I loved it. Could you discuss your approach to the character and the use of the countdown clock in the production?"
Panic. The mistake I made with Macbeth, if I get to play a huge role like that again, classical role, the thing I will do is I will learn all the lines. I know somebody like Laurence Olivier, probably Albert Finney, would do that. They turn up on the first day with the lines in their head. So what you have to think about then during rehearsals is building the character and understanding the complexity of the role. Because I've been ill in hospital and I've lost a lot of money, which is in the book, I had a severe clinical depression when my marriage broke down and I realised I wasn't going to be with my children every day, which pains me to this day. I had a breakdown, I lost a lot of work, I lost a lot of money in the custody battle for my children, whatever. I didn't have the time to sit down and learn that role before I went to rehearsal, so I was always playing catch up. I would do that. Macbeth is the role that made me want to be an actor. And my approach apart from that was, just as it is with Doctor Who, is to really want to collaborate with the people around me. Your performance is always in the actors that are opposite you. You cannot act in a vacuum. and to instinct. I'm not an intellectual, I'm not an academic. I didn't go to Oxford University or Cambridge. I don't have qualifications. You don't need them to be an actor. It's not an academic pursuit. It's a pursuit of the heart and the gut. So it was all that. It was all instinct. And it was the biggest night of my career and my life. The first preview of Macbeth at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon, and what did I do? I fell off the stage. And I feel like that was a message from above about humility. My dad by then had passed away, but I know what my dad would have said. He would have said, listen, Chris, you know, the least thing you can do is not bloody fall off the stage. I spoke to a director friend of mine who was in the theatre when that happened, and I spoke to them at length about how much it destroyed my confidence. Apart from that, I ripped all my intercostal muscles. When I fell off the stage, it was, you know, a 4-foot drop. I hit the floor in front of this guy, and I tore my rotator muscle. The important thing about this story is, as I fell, I hit the floor and I looked, and there was this guy looking at me. And you know what the English are like, we're quite uptight. But he didn't show embarrassment. I looked, it was like there was a close-up of him and a close-up of me, like Hitchcock. His eyes, my eyes. And I looked at him, and all I saw was sympathy and empathy. I didn't see, oh, I'm embarrassed, or you're a prick, or whatever. I saw, I'm really sorry that's happened to you, and that made me get up. That human reaction made me get up, and I got up, and I hauled, you know when you get out of the swimming pool? I hauled myself onto the stage, and as I did that, I just felt this, like Venetian lights ripping. And the physio said to me, he said, because you'd fallen, in order to protect your body, you braced yourself. You know, as you're falling through the air, you brace yourself for impact. He said, and then you immediately kind of expanding, and all my intercostals went. So I did about 30 shows on painkillers, which was great. And I was struggling, you know. And then after about 40 performances, I started to feel, I'm getting it now, I'm getting it. And the reviews were bad for me, you know, they went for me, which is fair enough, you put yourself up there. But I just wish they'd have come back around June, because I had it. And I did it, I did 119 performances of it. I did 4 months in Stratford, I did 4 months in London, and it was the thing that I wanted to do. That clock was a pain in the arse. You come off stage after 2 hours and people go, the clock was amazing. Thanks very much. The clock didn't learn its lines. The clock didn't fall off the stage. I did. All of us were pissed off with the clock, okay? Every actor's like, don't look at the clock! So that's a directorial question, I'm afraid, and she's not here.
And another question? Hello? Hold on. We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for coming. Which episode of Doctor Who was your favorite? That you were in.
If you were in.
Which episode of Doctor Who you were in was your favorite?
And which doctor is my favourite?
And which doctor? Yeah.
My favourite doctor is Jodie Whittaker. As a child, my first image of the Doctor was black and white. I was born in '64, the show started in '63, but the man when I think of Doctor Who, I think of Patrick Troughton. Because he was the first one I saw. I just have this flickering memory of a black and white and that extraordinarily intense face. But Jodie's my favourite. Yeah, definitely.
Which one of your episodes is your favorite?
That's difficult.
Your whole season is amazing.
Thank you. Well, if the whole season is amazing, that's because of the writers, not because of the actor, you know. That's it. Alan Rickman, I said this yesterday, I was in Boston. The great Alan Rickman went up and he won some award, probably an Oscar, I don't know. And he said, actors don't win parts, great roles win parts. And the roles are great, the great characters win, you know, win Oscars. And those are created by the writers. I loved Dalek, which was Rob Shearman, I think. Correct? Yes. And I loved the two-parter, The Doctor Dances, which was written by Stephen Moffat. I felt those two writers captured what I could do the best.
And do you dance?
I'm the worst dancer. No rhythm.
And hello.
Hello! Okay, so I first want to say I love you. You're great. Fantastic. And
Good accent.
I get a lot of double takes because I kind of look like you, so a lot of people are like, are you my daddy?
No question, you just said he just loves you. I think all these people love you, actually.
I love all these people. All Atlanta. I never thought I'd get to come to Atlanta. And I found out today that Gladys Knight, who's one of my queens along with Aretha, is from Atlanta. It means a huge amount to me. I was born in 1964. The album that changed my life was Marvin Gaye, What's Going On. It came out in '71. And for me to come to America and come to some of these places is huge.
And even that Tracy Georgia is just amazing. The voice that she has on that.
Gladys. Well, the last thing I want to do is I want to be one of Gladys's pips, just once in my life, so I can be taught to dance. I want to be one of Gladys's pips. Okay.
And we have a question over here.
Can you guys hear me up there?
Yes.
Okay. So I know you did a lot of promotion during Doctor Who, and one of my favorite ones that you did was on Top Gear, where you did the lap in the car. What were some of your other favorite little promo things that you had to do?
Your favorite promo things, like you did the Top Gear for Doctor Who.
Yeah.
What were the other favorite promo things that you did for Doctor Who?
Oh. Is anybody aware of a show called Blue Peter?
Yes.
Blue Peter was a show that I grew up with as a kid, and if you got to appear on it, or if you sent some artwork, you were given a Blue Peter badge. So at the age of 40, I went on Blue Peter, appeared to some children as the Doctor, and they gave me a Blue Peter badge. There's one story I should tell about when you play the Doctor, you realise the impact of it. I was in the Trafford Centre, which is a mall or a mall, as you call it, in Manchester. And the show was going out at the time. I was with my mum and my dad, who had dementia at the time. I was walking along, my mum was doing her shopping, I was keeping my eye on my dad. And this young woman came up to me, she said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. my son really loves Doctor Who, he'd like to meet you. I said, great. So she said, come here, John. And he walked up, looked at me and burst into tears. And that moment made me realise the impact. Because to children it's real. You're the doctor and it's a bit odd to meet you in a shopping mall. Kid just burst into tears and left. Story of my life.
Hello.
Hello. You said something earlier about Shakespeare. Was referenced, and I teach it, and the anthology I use has your picture on the cover as Hamlet. And I was wondering, when you said that it's not really an academic pursuit to act, is your approach to roles like Hamlet or Macbeth or something like Sophocles' Antigone, is that different from your approach to other more modern roles?
Your approach to Shakespeare, like Antigone and Hamlet, Macbeth, and things like that, is that different than when you take on other roles?
Obviously, Antigone is not Shakespeare, but...
One more time?
And obviously, Antigone is not Shakespeare.
Yeah, obviously.
No.
But you get it.
No, my approach is exactly the same. Panic. We'll get Chris Eccleston in. He'll panic. No, I think by hook or by crook, I created a bit of a platform for myself, a working class person, blue collar as you call it. And I was saying, I can do Hamlet, I can do, we can do. Shakespeare, classical, it tends to be white, and I can't change that, I'm afraid. White and very middle class. And that's what I got as a kid. You can't do Shakespeare because of your accent. You can't do Sophocles because of your accent. Well, I can, I'm from Salford. I don't accept that. So my approach when doing Hamlet, when doing Sophocles, which I did with Jodie Whittaker before Jodie became the Doctor, Antigone, is the same. It's not intellectual. It's visceral. It's instinctive. I do my research. Like my dad, I have a huge love of writers and language and words. And I honour that, but I also try and bring, for want of a bit of phrase, some of the energy of the street to it. People go to the theatre to be excited, not to see people to act from the neck up, And I think I got a lot from American cinema and American actors. I feel closer to that. De Niro, Brando, people like that who use their entire physicality, Scorsese's films, American films of the 70s. It felt like there was more of a blue-collar influence in American art and theatre and film, and that's what I gravitated to, and that's what I use. Panic.
So my question was that, so if none of the BBC stuff had happened and they were like, hey, you can come back to Doctor Who for a special and you get to collaborate with one other doctor, which doctor would you choose to do an episode with? And it doesn't matter if they're dead or whatnot.
Oh, wow. I'm going to be a little bit controversial. It gets on my nerves, the multi-doctor stories. I think it's kind of greedy, and it takes away from the mystery that was created by William Hartnell. I bet he never did it. Did he ever do a multi-doctor story?
He was kind of sick near the end, but yes, he did.
He did. Did he do it with Troutman?
He did with Troutman and Pertwee, and he was basically in a studio in front of a monitor and a chair because he
He was so sick.
Yeah, but he did it.
Yeah, I don't love the multi-doctor stories. I like there to be one doctor. If I had to do it, I think it'd be Trouton. Because the child in me responded to that. I went, oh, that's the doctor. The way you do. I have kids come up to me and go, you were my first doctor. And whether you like the performance or not, it's your first, oh, that's the doctor. So Trouton.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? No, Jody, because
Well, you can be honest by saying the classic doctors would be Trouton, the contemporary doctors would be Jody.
it'd be Jody. The best thing that I've ever seen connected with Doctor Who is there was a YouTube clip that went viral of a mother and a daughter watching the announcement of, what number is Jodie? 13. The announcement of the 13th Doctor. And this young girl is sat there with her mother, and her mother's got her iPhone on the daughter, and they're expecting it. They're expecting the 13th Doctor. And when they announce it's Jodie, you look at the young girl's expression. Because not only has she found the new Doctor, but she's going, it's a girl. And I think that was the greatest thing the show ever did. It said, you don't have to be male, and the changes that we're going through. That's when I really understood the power of the show, was that now the gender is not an issue, and I think that was massive, so I do it with Jodie.
Hello, my name is Eternal Zan, and my question is, what are you most proud of, both personally and professionally, that you've been able to accomplish in your life?
I think my son Albert and my daughter Esme, 10, 8, love me and trust me. I'm most proud of that. The most important thing that has ever happened to me late in life was becoming a dad. And that is everything. And I think I'm most proud of my mum. The upbringing she gave me and my brothers and my dad, the love that they gave us, watching my mum care for my dad for 12 years with dementia, the devotion, the selflessness. He would have done it for her. I'm very proud of my mum. And the love I was given. Professionally, I would say a show I did called Hillsborough, which was about a disaster in a football or soccer stadium in 1989, where 97 people lost their lives, and the British press said it was the 97 people's fault. They told lies. It wasn't. It was the fault of the Football Association, the organisation at the stadium, and unfortunately the police, who I don't like to attack, but they covered it up. We did a drama documentary about that, and it caused some questions in the Houses of Parliament. That's probably the proudest moment. It's a show that none of you will have seen. It's a hard-hitting show, but that I would say.
Hi. As an American, I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad, so you were the introduction of Doctor Who to my family with my children, who are now adults. And I know you've been through a lot of changes in your life, and we all have been through a lot of struggles and changes this past year. And I would like for you to, as just such an authentic person and a writer, to share an encouraging story from the past year with us.
She said you were her introduction to Doctor Who, and that she thanked you for that. And last bit, because the last bit faded.
I'm sorry. Just because we've all been through such struggles and changes, if you could share an encouraging story with all of us from your past year.
And then share an encouraging story from the past year.
Oh, from my past year. I honestly think it was doing Big Finish. You know, I didn't work from, as many of us didn't, I didn't work from March of 2020 until around Christmas of, just before Christmas 2020, and I walked into a studio and started playing the Ninth Doctor again. And I looked at the sound engineer, who'd been in the same boat as me, he'd not been working. And we looked at each other and we smiled and we went, let's go. And it was being creative again, being social again, and creating something again. I think if people like those Big Finish audios, that all of us that were working on them were like, we can do something again, we can communicate with each other. So the Ninth Doctor, I would say, is my uplifting story. And coming here. And today, the day we're going to have today, going to meet hundreds of people and say hello and speak. We've been shut down, it's been a nightmare.
Hello, Christopher, how are you?
Good, thank you.
So let me ask you something. So let's say the Ninth Doctor had to go up against Malekith, Dark Elf. What do you think would happen?
There would be no more Dark Elf. The Doctor wins every time.
You were fantastic.
Thank
You
you.
know what?
So are you.
So was I.
As someone who respects older actors, how is it to work with Anthony Hopkins?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I worked with him twice. I worked with him on Thor, The Dark World. We had a scene together. It was cool. When they shot Anthony Hopkins' stuff, he's an older man. He's certainly not fragile, but he's an older man. It'd been a long day, I expected him to leave, but he stayed to do his lines off for me. I worked at the National Theatre in 1983, selling programs and ice creams with my torch, showing people to their seats, American tourists, whatever. It was Hopkins I saw on stage, and he changed my idea of acting, because he is not an intellectual. It's like watching a crazed animal on stage. He tears it up. It's like, you watch Hopkins on stage, you're watching him and you're like, he's fully in control, but he seems out of control. Because the characters he's playing are often out of control. And I remember as a kid, I was 19, looking at him thinking, this bloke is going to jump in the audience and attack somebody. Or he's just going to leave the stage, get on a bus and go. You could not take your eyes off him. And then I worked with him again about 3 years ago. It was an American HBO BBC production of King Lear. And I took the smallest part I could get in it. And the director said to me, why are you here? What are you doing here? There's nothing for you to do in this role. I said, I'm here because of him. And I was allowed to attend rehearsals. And I was watching Anthony Hopkins play King Lear. And I, as a kid actually, comparative, was going to play Macbeth. So it was smart. It's like, learn from the masters. So I watched him do that, and then I took it into the rehearsal. It's like an apprenticeship.
Okay, so my question was, what was your favorite moment of filming Doctor Who?
Or doing it.
Filming it. Your favorite moment of filming Doctor Who?
I mean, I loved the whole thing. I'd never played a hero before. I'd always played the bad guy, or tortured, damaged people. And we used a bit of that in the Ninth Doctor. I loved the learning curve of trying to do some of the comedy. I'd never really done comedic stuff, the lighter stuff. I enjoyed being chased by a man dressed as a pig in a spacesuit. It taught me to, playing the Doctor taught me to take myself a little bit less seriously, you know. The Dalek, the confrontation with the Dalek, you know, because it's an icon, it was an icon of my childhood. And I remember myself and Billy Piper turned up for a read-through. We'd been shooting all day, we were late. We turned up for a read-through of the Dalek episode. Everybody was sat around, we just walked in, said, sorry we're late, sat down, started reading. I gave some dialogue to the Dalek, and unbeknown to me, Nicholas Briggs was in the room with the voice, and he did the thing, and I nearly jumped through the roof. And I do remember that everybody in the, you know, all the actors, the production team, and Billy did the same, we both went, whoa! I do remember the pleasure in people's faces, the way we responded to the Dalek. It's hugely iconic, isn't it? So I think seeing that thing chained up, and yeah, that was, you know, when they put me in the box, I can say that I did that.
I want to ask, how do you go about pursuing roles in America versus the UK?
I can't do that anymore as much because my children are in the UK, and it saddens me because I did a show called The Leftovers, and when I was asked what am I proudest of, I would put Leftovers with Hillsborough. So it's harder for me to do it because I mean I would do it if I could sit the kids down and say, look, I'm going there to do this for us, for money, but I really find it very difficult not to see them. But America's always been very good to me. As I said, as a young person, watching American film, I mean, as a kid, I had an impersonation with Jimmy Cagney. No, I'm not going to do it. I used to dance on the oilcloth in our kitchen as Gene Kelly. I love Gene Kelly. I love Jimmy Cagney. He was fascinating to me because he did White Heat, he did this Freudian gangster monster, and then he'd do Yankee Doodle Dandy. You're like, wow, there's a great doctor, Jimmy Cagney. He can do both. Irish American. He was frightening, you know. Where was I?
That's pretty good.
American
roles.
It's the same thing. I mean, I approached Damon Lindelof in the way that I approached Russell T Davies and said, I want to be in The Leftovers and I want to play Matt Jameson. And he said to me, but Matt Jameson isn't in The Leftovers. I've written the pilot. He's not in there. And I said, well, he's in the book and I want to play him. And he said, why do you want to play him? I said, well, you've got a man, a priest, a preacher, the rapture happens, and God doesn't take him. He's going to be angry. I said, that's a great dramatic pivot for it. And he went, okay, we'll do it. I wish it was that simple, but it was kind of like that. And I love Damon Lindelof. I love doing The Leftovers. So you do, you know, if you want something, you go after it. I've got an agent, I've got a manager, but if I really want something, I'll go for it. I think you've got to put yourself on the line and try for it. And I think people like Damon Lindelof, Russell T Davies like that. They like a personal approach because it's passion.
Yeah, we're at the 5-minute mark. We have a question?
We're having some technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, I enjoyed seeing you as the Duke of Norfolk in the first Elizabeth movie, and I wanted to ask you what it was like working with Kate Blanchett and Jeffrey Rush.
What was it like working with him?
Yes.
Fantastic. I became close with Kate on the set. We were real friends. And I was aware that, a little bit like me with a film called Let Him Have It that I did many years ago, she'd done a couple of films, but she was not the Kate Blanchett that we know today. And I watched her become that, not just during the shooting of the film, but then we did the publicity tour. And I think one of the first screenings we did in America, I remember the reception. The lights went up and people gave a standing ovation, and I looked down the line and saw Kate, and I can remember the expression on her face. I could see her going, what's happening here? So I watched that happen, and it was wonderful to watch Kate, because, you know, playing a role like Elizabeth, there's so much research you can do, there's so much academic, so many books, and she absorbed them all. But once she'd absorbed them all, once the camera was on her, it was about instinct. And it's the only time when I've been doing a scene with another actor where I forgot my lines. It wasn't in the film, but we were both at prayer. And of course, I'm a Catholic. I'm trying to work out whether she's Catholic or whether she's pretending to be Catholic. We had this, it was a great scene. It's on the cutting room floor, along with Anthony Hopkins. And she did something, and I couldn't speak. Because I remember going, I was just admiring her acting. I'm like, wow, you're amazing. And they said we had to go again because Chris didn't say his line. So to see that, I mean, that's probably the best actor I've ever worked with, is Kate Blanchett, I would say.
And this is going to be our last question.
Yeah, so you just happened to bring up The Leftovers. I was going to comment on your performance in The Leftovers. It was amazing. As a tortured believer, just super awesome. Do you have any memories or stories you'd like to tell from the set?
Oh. Austin, Texas. I loved Austin, Texas. Keep Austin weird. Probably apart from Justin Theroux, who was our lead actor, there was no big stars in that cast. It was a lot of American, respected actors, Carrie Coon, Ann Dowd. They were kind of theatre people. And there was a real feeling on The Leftovers of ensemble. And Justin really set the bar, because he was our leading man, but he understood that certain people took the spotlight, like Anne, like Carrie, like me, at certain times. It was the feeling that we were all working on something together. Which, you know, being accepted by American actors who I've always respected so much. I had far more in common with American actors than a lot of English middle class actors. You know, it was more democratic, that set was. And I mean, the heat in Austin, pushing that wheelchair around in Austin. I loved that show, I loved doing it.
And we're here today signing autographs, and you've got pictures and such things. Thank you like 10,000 million times for coming. And, this is Christopher Eccleston.
Thank you.